Greetings. Greetings. My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core and Core, and anyone that is interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor or student. So much of yesterday is spilling over into today, and my feedback on yesterday is that having freed up more space on my phone, it seems that Facebook was willing to broadcast for as long as I was. So the difference to take there in terms of an evaluation is that it seems that I am able to broadcast here on YouTube, which much less space open on my phone than is comfortable for Facebook to operate. I don't know what it is. And it might be something completely other than what I suspect. But I did take that action of trying to free up space on my phone and had success broadcasting with Facebook, no problem. So before even number one comes the statement, Pilates, eyes wide shut. Pilates, eyes wide shut. Now, in some ways, that's an indirect reference to it isn't an indirect reference to anything other than having your eyes not wide open, but eyes wide shut. And that takes me to number one. I think I need to move over a little bit here. Number one is aiming for the target blindfolded. Aiming for the target blindfolded. It's not that it can't be done, and done well, depending on how well one accesses what? Other senses, but besides the lack of sight, because we have other senses. The point I'm making in making the statement about aiming blindfolded is that aim any way you wish, tapping into whatever senses you wish, but depending upon how much you want to hit a particular target, aiming with your eyes open to see the target, can have a higher rate of success sooner than later in terms of hitting your target by being able to look at it, being able to see it. And Pilates, eyes wide shut. This is a broadcast about a particular point of view and maintains that there are thousands of others, all with this word, we'll talk about that more later, this word, Pilates, and how it's sacred as a subject. Because so many people care about it so much, in so many ways, at so many different levels, right? To the extent that it matters that much to the people that it matters to, I think in that regard it's sacred for whatever it is. You know, however you break that down or whatever, because what I've felt recently is how people feel about Pilates as something sacred to them. And I'd like to believe that I could empathize in some way with that. And in recognizing that it is sacred, find some sense of connection to anybody and everybody who has any degree of interest in it at all. This word of Pilates, the subject of Pilates, this whatever it is that means so much to so many, so deeply. So aiming for the target blindfolded, from the MMP point of view, is to be blindfolded or not look at, be eyes wide shut to looking at a point of view which as a presenter all you do is sell tickets to get up to this point of view, top of a mountain, a place to look out from, and then come back down from, right? This is contemporary, traditional, conventional, right? And something out beyond that, or not of that kind of level, but somewhere either beyond up here or like a river just at a different bank, but someplace relatively different, to call it transcendent, which is what I humbly claim as what I'm pointing to is a transcendent view. Just like Copernicus in his field, Einstein in his field, and Bruce Lee in his. Though Bruce Lee has some very juicy contrast and comparison. I can't wait to talk to Bruce. I've written, haven't I? A fictional dialogue about Bruce Lee and Joseph Pilates in heaven. Somewhere that's on my blog, I think. So in the view of MMP, being able to see the target, and maybe you knew what that is all along, okay? I'm not saying I invented it. I'm just saying this is the MMP point of view and the reasoned argument for there being an ideal within Joe's original work, to the point of extracting the ideal just from the three things in Joe's book that make up the five things of being a presenter of this point of view. So that was number one. Number two, and maybe this is the whole statement in and of itself, but number two says that you are inescapably your own context. That's me writing that as a note, as a title today. You are inescapably your own context. From the point of view I'm talking about, as a human being, that human beingness of what that is as a entity, right? That individual, it's within that individual that a context exists. And so when I say you are inescapably your own context, as a human being, you are your own context. And within the interest of Pilates and the MMP point of view of coordinating a human being's being, thinking, and observing, You seek to empower a person to coordinate those capacities, not only during the session, when they work out with you, and that you're reaching toward the conditioning of that it's all meant to be about, but as a resonant effect, establishing coordination of being, thinking, and observing outside the realm of performing the kata, the choreography, the sequence of moves. I don't know how far you move away from that in whatever you do in Pilates, but for me, the context of me as a human being and standing on that threshold of, of the experience that has me in the moment, being alive, entering the world of another human being as an instructor, that's as real as it gets, and as scary, and as thrilling. All of those things that are about in the moment, that don't even bring up all the beneficial aftermath of the effort, which to me, Pilates is often characterized as by what you get out of it without paying any attention to the way you do it in order to get what you get out of it. So, number three. I already went into it in terms of Pilates is sacred, that statement from yesterday, that title. I resonate with that statement because it means so much to me, and I know that through empathy it means so much to others in so many ways, at so many levels, in ways that I can't appreciate or never know about. But because it's sacred to me, I think it has to be sacred to you as well, for some reason and to some extent and to some level. And if not, then even though I can understand or accept how that can be the case, don't let your consideration of what Pilates might be get in the way of you absorbing whatever you can and like and want to develop and promote in the Pilates that you find and love. It's either evolving and you're the artist in the paint, which is true, or it's something that there is, still inspires, that has an essence of its own, and that's an MMP point of view, a reasoned argument made to explain what Pilates is. At least through the view of MMP. MMP is an explanation of Pilates. CT is an explanation of core tension. One is about biomechanics, and the other is about the word Pilates. So, see, to the extent that Pilates is sacred, how can that be unless it's personal to the individual that has a connection to it? It's only, I think, at an individual level that it can be sacred. How's that? Right? And acknowledging that Pilates has a very personal connection to a lot of people. It's very sacred to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons, for undescribed reasons, for emotions and sentiment and spirit and for the unexplicable and the ecstatic and the beyond words that Pilates can mean or point to. Brings me to number 4, spectrum. Even though at number 3, see, from sacred it's personal, the point of MMP is that some of what that sacred is, that's personal to everybody, has a universal character. And that's where the MMP point of view will never draw a large crowd, just because out of spectrum, there aren't, in the spectrum of distribution of what it takes to be an observer or care about observing or want to go there or find any interest in or not be put off by. I find comfort in always falling back to the light that I hold out in this broadcast, which is what it is, and the light, I think, illuminates the ideal within Joe's original work, and that makes Joe a messenger to humanity. Message delivered. Whatever else you make out of whatever else he did or what's been made of it, it was a mic drop for Joe. And sadly still to this day. Will be understood by you and me and a few others. And when throwing the word franchise around disparagingly, I've said make a difference between franchises and yet see benefits. And the benefit I see in a local franchise that I'm familiar with is that they make group participation in spring tension available. So whatever you're doing and whatever you're making of or consider to be Pilates, the step more general than that, with that franchise, is that for much less money than ever been afforded before, people can go and get involved in spring tension. And that's a good thing. Cornu is definitely happy. When you consider what it costs to listen to this broadcast, I mean, how much does this cost you to listen to this? And so what I hope is being broadcast is a point of view, and it's an ideal point of view of Pilates, and it comes from what Joe says in his book. And I know there's a lot of other ways to look at Pilates. All I do is know that the press between my shoulder blades continues to be to sit here and share with you this point of view as well as I can while I can. Because for me, it's reinforcing the field. It's feeding the field of the point of view that there's an ideal within Joe's original work. And if you look at my resume at hermit.com, you'll see that I traveled some to feed that field. And all that means is I traveled around to share my point of view to the best I could while I could. So my number 4 was spectrum, and we've already covered that. Well, it's a title. And when you look at anything and you consider that it's reality to show up in spectrum, how well can 10 people do the same movement? And how do you judge that? And I think in discovering or stating or feeling how Pilates is precious to all of us, the bad news that my point of view appears on the surface ends up being high ground in the tsunami that we're underway within, that we're in, we're swept up in. The closer you are to whatever you're doing and whatever you're making believe Pilates is, to the extent that it resonates to the ideal within the original work that MMP tries to point to, what you make of it and what you find in it becomes a source of passion, and in a way it goes from there to sacred because of how personal it is. Does that work? I don't know, but I think the more it's recognized for what is universal, it can be experienced in a broader, deeper spectrum, aware of an ideal point of view, and aware of core new tension, than ignoring it altogether or being unaware of it. It's just a physics. It's a physics thing. And so yes, you're going to see great pictures and great form with deep creases at the pelvis, which is one of the biggest abuses of the reformer, to do a needle-like stretch using the reformer and yet passing it off as Pilates, personal point of view, because in Pilates you want uniform engagement, and I can't, deep crease at the hips. You might point to stomach massage and say, well, what's that? Anybody in that I was an instructor for, I would then say, okay, now let's make a smooth curve between hips, shoulders, and ears. So you're standing on a reformer on one leg, the other leg's in the air. Ideally with an end point of tension in the metatarsals, regardless of how the supporting foot is positioned, flat foot or demi. Front snap kick is another formation for demi. But the point I'm making there is hips, shoulders, and ears on a smooth curve in flexion is a challenge in uniform engagement that is unattainable or different than a deep crease at the hips. So at least beware of the distinction I'm drawing there, and knowing why, because there's nothing that I know of that mirrors that exact thing on the reformer in Joe's original work. And so, if it's original, I'd love to see that. And if it's not, I assume it's derivative and only done out of the presumption that one doesn't know you're after uniform engagement, and that showing 3 points on a smooth curve in flexion is much more classical and much more resonant to the desired result of the effort, which is uniform engagement. Might take my slant on things, but you can make of it what you will. Spectrum. Okay, here's my summary statement. There is no answer in the attic. Did you get that? There is no answer in the attic. There's no answer in the attic. There's no truth that you get to someday that you're not worthy of assembling now on your own. From stuff that's been out of the attic for a long time, and stuff that once Joe published his book, everything else in the attic became relics and artifacts, which is great. It's nice to have more clarity in understanding from so little left in original work. Okay? So my statement under there's no answer in the attic, if that's true, then it's what you make of it. That's the number one thing. If there's no if there's no someday you'll be worthy enough to hear the truth or see the relics or 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 be deigned that you know enough to say that you know anything. Search Ditzy Little in my forum. So if there's no, in the MMP point of view, it stands outside of just what's there and available and seeks to make some kind of thinking, understanding, a reasoned explanation for what Pilates is. And that's what MMP is about. It's just an explanation of Pilates. It's an ideal one. You heard all this. It's within this MMP point of view, an ideal view, that my note says personal back. What you do with it is up to you. For me, the personal is ideal. My interaction with and my pursuit of and my doing, the performance of the choreography has ideal inspiration. And what becomes real in my movement is inspired by reaching for not only ideal in abstraction, but ideal that I can feel. Alignment, uniform engagement, core tension, of course, what I mean. I think there's a breath of fresh air and relief in saying that Pilates is sacred, because it gives everyone room to participate in that in their own sense of agreement, without having to defend themselves in what way it's sacred to them, because it's personal. Now, when it comes to saying what is or isn't Pilates, that all depends on your point of view. And MMP is just one point of view among thousands. But to the extent that you have listened to and understand this point of view, and you sort of have it in your hip pocket as a buoy in the night, giving you a sense of where you are as you navigate, that's what MMP is all about. That's where the surviving as a Pilates instructor comes in. For as long as you can, as well as you can, because life can't live forever. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. Add two and two. Before add two and two, appreciate perspectives, points of view, differences in points of view. Appreciate this perspective of MMP and CT like at the top of a mountain, and that you can make money selling a gondola ride, just making an explanation of it, that many people will come back down into the valley and be glad they're back to their normal world. And yet others aren't not going to want to leave. And as a Pilates instructor, that's what you're looking for. And whatever you consider teaching Pilates to be, can be whatever it is, as personal as it is, and as sacred as that is to you. Without losing the advantage and the income, I would think, I suspect someday, the income from explaining what makes CT and MMP what they are. And that it is a trip from where you are up to someplace else to look around, and then you can go back to where you were and enjoy that. Or pursue in more depth and detail and income and time. Appreciate perspectives, differences in perspectives. Then add 2 and 2. Ask for 5. Or 1,000, or 10, or 100. Knowing what you know about CT and MMP, to me, is priceless, because it's way ahead of its time, and being aware of it puts you at an advantage to anyone else who only comes from a perspective that's predominantly traditional and conventional, to downright colloquial. Add 2 and 2. Direct your thinking. And direct it from a peaceful state of mind. Geist.